first revolution in the Philippines after the establishing of our independence was the EDSA Revolution in 1986, after Ferdinand Marcos announced the martial law and misused it by removing the writ of habeas corpus. The second revolution against ERAP was in 2001 because of the numerous scams that he had gone during his presidency. Fast forward to today, after having the incumbent Duterte administration, we have newly elected the son of Ferdinand Marcos, Bongbong Marcos. When we had elected Duterte, it is for his reasons and promises that he will eliminate the drug problem in the Philippines by the use of foreign drugs. Now we have elected Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos for his promises of unity and reform. However, there are still those who are dissident solely because Bongbong Marcos comes from Ferdinand Marcos. And there are also those who are dissident over the fact that Duterte's previous methods of problem elimination were unethical because of extrajudicial killings. So what does this say about our country? And what does Rizal have to say about today's society? Let us first go to the article written by Renato Constantino in 1959, signifying the relevance of Rizal in today's time. His article, the goal of it was to rouse the people to action, to make the problems in Rizal's time solved and his warnings obsolete. The most notable quote that I can quote from this article is that our task is to make Rizal obsolete. His reasoning was that the problems that he warned against during his time in the 19th century, seeing that they are still relevant today, shows how little the Philippines has actually progressed over the years. He enumerates some examples like our admiring of Tolisans, those who are socially mobile, without us questioning the motives and the means on how they were able to move about in society, gain material wealth and resources. Pelaez taking advantage of the poor for profit. By the way, Pelaez is this character in Noli Me Tangere and other characters which we will be enumerating in this talk. Renato Constantino also enumerates influence peddling. Just recently, a couple of lawyers were disbarred because of their influence peddling. They say that they can be paid more by their clients and because they can convince them that the justice system is very controllable and it's corrupt and it's broken and it can be manipulated just for a simple bribe fee. Constantino also enumerates invasion of foreign culture because of our adaptation of foreign languages, especially English. We know that English is the universal language, but we find ourselves using it quite more and more often. We use it in social media. We accommodate our attention to foreign artists, K-drama, Korean movies, although that's nothing bad. But the problem is, we very seldom see Filipino content. You had to scour the internet for Filipino content. For example, searching Facebook for Commission sa Wikang Filipino or the Commission for the Filipino language just to see nationalistic content. But in foreign content, social media, they just spring out by themselves. Filipino content does not show up by themselves in social media as foreign content does. Although, there's the Voltes 5 recently, but even that is an appropriation of Japanese anime. What happened to original Filipino content in media? Constantino also shows intellectual captivity due to the same adoption of foreign language. Did you know that back then, we had 12 compulsory units of Spanish? Rizal argued that we cannot or we should not go to other languages unless we have mastered our own language, Filipino. I know of families who only speak English but fail to fluently speak Filipino. There are Filipino families, Filipino mothers, and foreign Filipino mothers and fathers. Constantino also uses the people in Rizal's novels to characterize the social cancer, like Captain Tiago, who cowers before people of power only to his own convenience and fear for his own life. Doña Victorina, who acts as an Occidental just to look down on her fellow countrymen. Basilio, who fought for the adoption of Spanish instead of Filipino in the school. The people in Cabezang town who are indifferent and are willing to look the other way just to save their own skin. My uncle would tell me to pick out only the issues that directly affect me so that I would not be stressed out by everything too much. That was a pragmatic advice because all that issues ever do is stress me out. So to not stress me out, just don't think about them. But but how could I not think about them if it involves our fellow countrymen? I appreciate the pragmatic nature of it, but it is a second thought. It should be thought about again. There's also the foreigners paradise like Don Custodio, who was not very prominent in his home country Spain, but is very prominent in the Philippines just because he is a foreigner. This outlines what I would call the internalized gaze of shame, because we hold foreigners in high regard, which come from our uh, colonial conquering roots, because we were colonized by Spain and then by America and then by Japan for a very long time, for a number of decades. This internalized gaze of shame turned us to be indifferent towards ourselves, and our attention is now outward instead of inward. So, what do we do with all these problems? And our task, is it really to make Rizal obsolete? What does it mean to make Rizal obsolete? But in my opinion, we have to make Rizal's warnings obsolete. His warnings, but not his ideas. What do I mean by that? In Renato Constantino's article, he said that we have to make Rizal obsolete. And that means we have to make his problems that he warned about in the 19th century to be completely eradicated today. He also said he does not mean for Rizal to be forgotten, but it also makes us remember how great he was when we solve our current problems today. However, I think Renato Constantino misworded his argument, because when you say make Rizal obsolete, the immediate impression would be make Rizal and his teachings and his ideals and his values obsolete? Obviously not. I think Renato Constantino could have done is make Rizal's warnings obsolete or Rizal's problems obsolete. And I think he was right that if the problems in his time apply to the day, they are still relevant, but in that regard, Rizal should not be relevant anymore. That's what I think about the Renato Constantino's article and what it has to say about society today. It is not bad to consume content from other foreign countries like America or Korea or Japan, because there is something to be learned about their culture. It is fine to learn about other cultures and figure out ways to make our culture better. At the same time, we have to go back to our roots, appreciate the history of our past, as what he said in his Morga annotation of Successes de la Isla Filipinas. that in order to foresee the future and analyze the present, we have to open the book of the past. That being said, don't get me wrong, there have been efforts to make the Philippines better. I recently read a biography of George Bocobo, the fifth president of the University of the Philippines, a jurist, scholar, writer, lawyer, poet. He was very good because he wrote the code, the civil code, in the commission, in his commission, that really restructures the way, or at least in his time, how law is dealt in the Philippines. He placed an emphasis on Filipino culture and protects the impoverished and those who cannot afford basic resources so that they may be better helped during their in the course of their lives. Since he was also president of the University of the Philippines, he placed special emphasis on the education of the youth. The youth was a special place in his heart, which he dedicated years of sacrifice for. And that's what I admire in the Filipino. We have this side that we may consume too much foreign content, but there's also the side of us that is willing to die for the Filipino. Nowadays, what I see is that there are people like me, peers like me, who said that we should leave the Philippines or that the Filipinos are not worth dying for. That is entirely missing the point. The Filipinos are entirely dying for, even though we have our own silly side, or we have our own imperfections, our flaws. That's why the flaws are there to be corrected. And if we can correct them, we may be able to envision the society that Rizal had dreamt, that George Bocobo had dreamt, that other heroes like him had dreamt. That we may become the civilians of the Philippines, the Pearl of the Orient, that Rizal had once dreamt of and vision. Thank you.